Get ready before life happens. The podcast helping you navigate life's what ifs.
Welcome to Get Ready Before Life Happens, helping you navigate life's what ifs with integrity and purpose. I'm your host, Tony Stewart. Today, I'm joined by Taj Chiu, a divorce coach. Taj, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Tony. And I call myself a divorce and financial coach because I kind of blend these two worlds. And I found a lot of divorce coaches feel really uncomfortable with finances. They kind of go, oh, stay away. Let me just, let me do parenting or let me do something else. I want to stay away from this piece. And the financial piece is one of the most important pieces and kind of a source of terror, honestly.
Yeah, people don't really want to talk about money, not only in divorce, but in every situation. Well, that kind of leads me to our lead in question. Tell me a little bit about your origin story and how did it lead you to this area?
Yeah. How did it lead me? Okay, so 6, 7 years ago, I had made some real financial mistakes. Just some not good stuff. That 3 a.m. wake up with the fear sweat kind of situation. And I started trying to figure out how I was going to pull myself out of the situation, or my family really out of the situation. And I found a financial coach online and I joined his class. And the first time I didn't go because I was too scared. So I think I showed up to the first class and then I was like, oh, run away. And and then I emailed him like a couple months later and was like, can I paid for it. Can I join? And he was like, absolutely. Come join the next session. And I did. And that time I was able to stick. I was able to stay. And I ended up coaching along with him because he and I were very different ages, different life experiences. He was much younger than me. And I ended up coaching alongside him almost while I was still a student. And that was an interesting experience. And I was like, oh, this is like, okay, I can talk about money. Hey, like, okay, this is new. And then maybe 6 months later, he invited me to officially co-coach with him. And we did a couple of groups. It was group financial coaching, and I absolutely loved it. And what I discovered is that my history as a soccer coach, so I have been coaching soccer for 25, we won't talk about how old I am. Um, but we can kind of do the math. I started coaching soccer before I had kids. So about 25 years I've been coaching soccer. And I discovered that all of this knowledge that I had built up as a soccer coach really showed up here somehow. And while I was co-coaching with him, I came up with the thing that is now my logo, which is an ostrich and a bison. Now, people look at this image all the time and they're like, what is it? So it's an ostrich with its head in the sand. I get all kinds of interesting interpretations for what the ostrich is. So if you go to my
Mhm.
website and you're like, what the heck is it? Okay, it's an ostrich and a bison. Because what I discovered, ostrich, head in the sand. So that was me when I ran away and couldn't stay in the class. Total ostrich, storm is raging around me. I'm having 3 a.m. fear sweat, but I'm still running away. I'm sort of engaging and I'm sort of running away at the same time. And the bison is on the other end of the spectrum. So, bison, storm is raging, only animal that I know, led by a matriarch, walks into the storm because you'll get out the other side faster. Amazing. So, this is a spectrum of all of us, our behavior with regards to kind of everything in our life, whether or not we're sitting on the ostrich end or the bison end or somewhere in the middle. Usually there's kind of a healthy middle ground in there. And I had learned to move from ostrich to mostly bisoning, right? And I wanted to help other people do it. So I was like, okay, I love this coaching thing. This is amazing. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm kind of following my instinct and this history that comes out of soccer coaching. So I went back and got my ICF certification. So I became an ICF certified coach. ICF is the International Coaching Federation. Most people have never heard of it. One of the largest coaching certification bodies in the world. And I came out of that going, okay. I kind of get this coaching thing. I love it even more now. But financial coaching isn't really a piece of what the ICF focuses on at all. We actually never talk about money. We never talk about finances. It's sort of like generic life coaching is kind of the general direction. So I had to go spelunking around and searching to try to figure out how I was going to incorporate all that I had learned from the ICF and my training into this financial piece and kind of mix them together in a shaker and see what came out. So I did a YNAB certification. YouNeedABudget.com has a coaching certification now. I did that. So that's very, though, sort of direct and like, how do we use this tool, which I had already been using for a long time. So that's a little bit how I got here. And then I separated and I realized, oh, divorce is a really wonderful forcing function. So coaching is work, right? If you come to a coach, expect to do some work. We're going to work together, we're going to figure stuff out, and you're going to leave each session with like something you need to do or something in your mindset that changed. Well, sometimes we need a forcing function to get us out of ostrich and into the bison area. And divorce is one of those. And so I realized this amalgamation of divorce and financial coaching was a really wonderful way to kind of bring all of that ostrich and bisoning and all of that deep understanding into a space where there's a forcing function.
That's quite the story, and I love the bison and the ostrich because it's like, and as you point out, is sometimes you do need that middle ground, but I think that you do have to address the storm. That you can't just ignore it. That so many of us tend to do that,
Mhm.
and it never works out well. Uh,
Yeah. At
you know,
least
we may
not
be able to
maybe
persevere.
for a little while, or at least it feels that way, right? But it's that piece about there's a deep fear that's happening when we're ostriching. And so we can sort of ostrich and act as if the storm isn't there, but in reality we have to engage with the storm, but it's terrifying. And so part of it is I see my job as like, let's hold hands. Like, let me hold hands with the ostrich. And having been an ostrich, a full-blown ostrich myself, I come with no judgment about what it means to ostrich. We can all get there through various things that happen in our lives, whether they came by our choice or someone else's or whatever the circumstances are. We kind of need to hold hands with an ostrich and say, like, it's going to be okay. And we can bison together. So the one of the pieces I really like about this visual metaphor, it's much easier to say, I can ask a client, hey, where are you on the spectrum today between ostrich and bison? And they can say, I'm super ostrichy. Well, you showed up today, so you're not full ostrich because full ostrich wouldn't have shown up to this appointment. So fantastic. Let's see how we can spend a little time in bison today. And that's that. It's this very personal experience to have somebody be in ostrich with you because you kind of just want to go hide in the closet and like, shut the door and turn off the light and the boogeyman won't find me, right? So that's where that came from.
I love it. So let's talk about fear a little bit because,
Oh.
all of us feel some fear to some degree about money, whether we admit it or not. Is how do people start addressing fear? Or I mean, or is that even it is just naming it?
I think it's naming it. So in full ostrich, we're almost in denial of our fear. A little step out of ostrich is acknowledging the fear. And what I find the biggest antidote to financial fear is information. It's not financial literacy. So it's not, I'm going to teach you how savings accounts work and checking accounts and how does the stock market work and what's a bond? It's not that. It's what does my life actually look like? So I always start with a budget. And what I say is, okay, budget, big scary word. I think budget's gotten a lot of connotations, negative connotations in our society. And so I try to just say, we have a plan for our time, like on our calendar. A budget's just a plan for money. That's all it is. It's nothing more complicated than that. And the first thing we have to do is just know what's happened. Like, what is our money doing? Because many times, if we're in full ostrich mode, our money is kind of just doing things. We don't know what it's like. It's like it wanders around at night and moves, and we don't know what happened to it. And so the first piece is just where's our money going? What jobs is it doing? And that can take a while. I tell people, like, if we're going to build a budget, it's going to take like 3 months before you really know where the money is moving around and what jobs it's doing. But let's just start with, we don't have to change anything. Let's just find out what's happening. That's usually the first step, is just what's happening.
I like that. And, the biggest antidote to fear is knowledge, is because learning about something is oftentimes what helps you overcome a fear, because you realize it's not always as bad as you think it is. Or, I mean, it's almost never as
It's
bad as you
almost
think it
never.
is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
specialty is working with neurodivergent and special needs family. Is there a reason why you specialized in that area?
There's a lot of neurodivergence and special needs in my own family. And I think part of the reason I've chosen to specialize there is because many financial professionals don't feel accessible to people who might feel a little different, might feel, I have a certain communication style, or, um, I need a break when I'm talking about things. I need somebody to, um, push me in certain ways and not push me in certain ways. And there's an emotional knowledge and IQ that I have developed over many years. The soccer coaching comes into it as well. Lots of neurodivergent players, special needs families. I also helped to run my soccer league, so I saw a lot of it from a top level, and even what would happen for our soccer players with special needs or neurodivergence who didn't have a coach that could, you know, be with the child in the way that they needed to be a player on the team. And so it feels really important to me that there is a very explicit place for people who feel like, I really want to work with a professional who will understand me and acknowledge that my differences are not weaknesses, they're just differences, and that they're important, and um, that they need acknowledgement and respect. And then the special needs part, so oftentimes, there's a lot of crossover between neurodivergence and special needs. And special needs create lots of different financial situations. So part of the reason I bring that in is because if you have a special needs child or a special needs adult in the family, maybe you have a child that's going to need care their whole life, right? So that's a very different situation, especially in divorce. We need to do a lot of different stuff if we have a special needs kid in the family or a neurodivergent child that's going to need extra support throughout their life. So that's got to be included in the planning in the divorce. But just more generally, um, neurodivergent and special needs families are my people. And I want them to know there's a financial professional they can go to and not feel intimidated.
I love that. And I think one thing you said that is especially resonant with me is that differences are not weaknesses. And I think sometimes we tend to equate that
Yeah.
with a weakness. And I've worked with some, I was a volunteer with this organization, Environmental Traveling Companions. We did outdoor
Mm.
adventures for people with special needs. And, there
Oh,
was a
that's
group of
cool.
developmentally delayed adults that I did a
Yeah.
lot of trips with. And they were a wonderful group, but yeah, they were different. They needed different things, but there wasn't anything wrong with that. It was just a different experience.
Yeah.
Uh, but they were amazing people.
Yeah.
And so
I
I
love it.
think, now that was a little more extreme because some of them couldn't live on their own and, things like that. But There is a medium too sometimes where we think somebody is different, but they're not really different at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm. Well, but that we all are different, right? We all are different and we all have different needs, and expecting anyone to sit inside of a particular box, that's the beauty to me of coaching, is that coaching, when a client shows up with me, it's where are they today? What do they need? And I kind of enter every coaching session thinking, I know from my last session certain things about my client, right? I have some history. I know what we talked about last time, but I fundamentally expect that the person that shows up at my current session is a new person because they've had a set of experiences that have happened since I last saw them, and they're new to me. I need to get to know that person that day and not hold them to any version of themselves that existed before. We need to do that for everyone.
I love that. I think that is something that we forget, especially if we haven't seen a client in a while, that things have changed and they're not coming in with the same goals or money story or whatever you want to call it, that things change. And
Yeah.
then we have to find out what's changed. Is, I almost think of it as a little bit like a detective, is figuring out what's going on and what the clues are, before you can solve the mystery. Um, but the financial services industry is great at providing solutions without knowing what the mystery is.
I love that. I love that without knowing what the mystery is. I've never thought of myself as a detective before. I'm gonna have to explore that metaphor for what I do. I like it.
Yeah, there's something. I was a first responder in something called a differential diagnosis,
Hmm.
where you're basically knocking things out,
Yeah.
and for those of us who've gone to a doctor, which just pretty much everybody is, sometimes your doctor will say things and you're like, that's not even close to what's wrong with me. But
Mm,
that's how we have to think. And that's what a doctor's thinking of, like, well, this might be a crazy thing, but I need to rule it out.
yeah.
And so that's what I think about, is because we don't know when somebody walks in, and a doctor doesn't know, because maybe you are that 0.0001% of cases that present in a certain way. And our clients are going to be like that too, is maybe our clients are going to be a huge outlier. And
Yeah.
so we have to recognize that. So
Yeah. And
that's
not trying
immediately
to.
what I thought of.
Yeah, no, I love it. I have a child who's super interested in medicine, and I feel like on the way to the doctor with my mom yesterday, I was doing a differential diagnosis, attempting to help sort of narrow down the set of things that we were going to bring to the doctor so that we could use our time effectively. So I understand exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that was essentially how I looked at it, is like, you're a detective. You have all
Yeah.
these clues. Maybe somebody's running a temperature, or, they have a headache or whatever. So it's like, okay, what do I do with these clues
Yeah.
without assuming that a certain event has happened? Because, in medicine, that leads to really, really bad outcomes if you make a wrong assumption.
Yeah.
I think with finances, making the wrong assumption can be really harmful to someone. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think I really believe the classic when you assume you make a beep out of you
mhm.
and me. Like that is just true.
Yeah, well, that was my dad's favorite saying. So, one of the things is, people have overwhelming emotions sometimes, and you're dealing with people going through divorce, which is super emotional. It's heavy. You may have been married to somebody for 30 or 40 years. Your life is changing. How do people start to cut through those overwhelming emotions and start to overcome them?
A lot of it's time. So one of the challenges in divorce. So I'm a really big advocate of alternative dispute resolution in divorce. So let's keep ourselves out of litigation. Let's keep ourselves out of court. Let's use mediation. Let's use all the options we have to keep as much of our money that the family, as many of our assets and the hard work that a family has done, let's keep as many of them inside the family as possible, right? Because whether or not a couple is married and has children, they remain a family, right? So those people are still connected, they still have children together. So I still think of it as the family system, right? It's not one spouse or the other has these assets. It's really, what does the family system retain? So one of the big challenges is initiator versus receiver of the divorce. So when we look at, there's like a great curve to look at. So going through a divorce in many ways is a lot like a grief process. So there are stages of it. And so many times we have an initiator who has been thinking about divorce. It's been in their head often for years. And so they have worked through many of the stages and almost might be out of the stages of a divorce process by the time they actually ask for the divorce. And then we have the other party who is receiving it, who may have never seen it coming. The couple may have never even discussed divorce until, the initiator said, "Hey, I want a divorce." And so what's really challenging is sort of catching the receiver up to the initiator. Coaching can help. So having conversations that help the receiver to start to process what's happening, get out of full ostrich, because that's often where the receiver will go, is straight to ostrich, like just head in the sand, pull the covers over, no, 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 like a 2-year-old kind of just having a tantrum. Like, if I can't see you, you can't see me, kind of a situation. So coaching can help, time can help. An important piece of that, I would really love to meet a client, either the initiator or the receiver, before they've hired a lawyer. Because this isn't always true. But if we're going to keep conflict out of the divorce, we want to get sort of both parties as quickly as possible onto even ground. A lot of times, the two parties don't have even financial information. That's usually one of the biggest issues, is they don't have the same set of financial data. One party's been managing the finances in the family, and the other party may basically know nothing. We got to get them even and trued up as soon as possible, because the fear that comes from knowing that your life is going to change, knowing that your standard of living is going to change, but having absolutely no idea what that's going to look like, absolutely terrifying. So as soon as we can get that trued up, that helps with a lot of it. That helps a lot with the fear and the emotional overwhelm, is, again, information, knowledge. When we don't have it, it's terrifying. But many people don't feel, especially if they've not been the one managing the money, they feel like they don't even know what to ask for, right? What would I ask for? I don't know. So that's kind of where I come in and say, I can help you figure that out. We need to figure out, what's your life going to cost, right? What is your life going to cost after you're divorced? Let's be realistic about it. What assets do you as a family have? How much are they worth? Do you need cash flow now? Do you need help to find a job? All of those pieces, just knowledge, really.
Yeah, information is always good to have. And what it makes me think of, and it's a theme that people who watch and listen to this podcast have heard many guests talk about, is that women, especially if you're not part of the money conversation in your relationship, today is a day you need to start becoming part of the money conversation and figuring it out. And it's not necessarily because of divorce, although there is a
Mm.
rise in gray divorce rate.
Oh, yeah.
There's a good chance you may become a widow. Men have much shorter life expectancies than women, so it's important that you understand how your money works. Or your husband may have cognitive decline, and so you
Mm.
may be managing the family's finances. So you're doing it for yourself, but you're also doing it for your family,
Mm.
for your kids. So take the time to start having money conversations with your partner. No matter which relationship you're in, is what type of relationship, there's always one person who's usually the money person. Like, I happen to be the money person in my family because I work in the money world.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with a lot of guests, is we're all in the money world, so we tend to be the money person in a
Right.
relationship. But
Yeah.
for me, whether my wife really wants to or not, is I talk to her about money, every, so many weeks, and make sure she knows what's going on and she's aware of every decision. Well, every consequential decision that I'm making. She doesn't want to know the details. So, you know,
Yeah.
but
Well,
I
how do
think that's
you
so
do
important.
those? I would love to hear how you do your those money conversations with your wife. So, what do you find works to include the partner that isn't so interested, perhaps even in all of that? What works for you all?
Is finding, we have a rhythm because we've been married for a long time, but really finding out how your significant other wants to talk about money.
Mm,
It's really understanding what their communication style is. Do they want a lot of information? Do they want the bottom line? You know, um, sorry about that. For some reason,
that's okay.
anyway, for people watching and listening, please forgive me, a little technical glitch. So hopefully we'll get this edited out. But anyway, so you have to know how your
Yeah,
partner w- receives information and then meet them there. But
yeah.
you also have to be willing to open up about money. And that means the good, the bad, and the ugly. To borrow the Clint Eastwood title,
Yeah,
is you have to be open.
yeah,
So I think that's really important. So
yeah. Well,
that'd be
for
my
me,
answer.
yeah, for me as a YNAB person, I'm a huge advocate of, you need a budget. I think it's $109 a year now to have YNAB. You can share it with family members, so you can have multiple budgets. And the nice thing about using YNAB as a tool is it gives you a way. So, as you said, how much information do they want, right? So, the budget can be available to them at all times, but having a regular sort of money date where we sit down and we talk about, like, let me just walk you through maybe the reports in YNAB, right? Maybe we just look at the reports and here's our income from last month, and here are our expenses, and we're saving up for that vacation in France, or looking forward to retirement, or whatever the piece is. Because really, the thing a budget can do in our lives is help us meet our short-term goals, our long-term goals, and is our spending and savings in alignment with our values. That's really and there is no right or wrong, right? So I say sometimes to people, and it makes them laugh, I say, look, like, if your value is to spend $1,000 a month on shoes, fantastic. We just need to make it work in the budget, right? So when we say yes to one thing, we say no to something else. So the $1,000 that's going to the shoes isn't doing some other job, but that's okay. If that's your value, if shoes are your thing, and go for it. So this idea of just looking at our money through a lens of short-term goals, long-term goals, and values, having that plan, right, allows us to both look forward and look backward at whether or not we're doing that. And I think that would be an important part of that conversation, with your partner about, are we doing that? And that changes, right? Our short-term goals, our long-term goals, maybe our values change as well, right? As our life changes, what's important to us changes, and different stages of life. But that's really what we're looking for, is like, are we in alignment? Which would also mean a conversation about those things as well.
Yeah, it's talking about the soft stuff, and sometimes it's uncomfortable conversations that you have to have. So, but yeah, a money date is a great way to do it if you feel that you want to do something like that. Ours is more casual. There's episode, trying to remember her last name. I'll put it in the show notes, but she has something called financial date discussion cards. So if you have access to the show notes, you can get a link to that episode and learn more about the financial date discussion cards. So it gives you something to talk about and the prompts to have these conversations because they can be hard to have.
Mhm.
So, one of the things that you talk about is a legal divorce and then there's the emotional divorce.
Mm,
Why is it important to create a plan for the legal divorce and the emotional divorce?
what a great question. they're really fundamentally very different events. So the legal divorce is about money, right? It's about dividing assets. It's about money. It might be about spousal support. If there are children involved, it might be, it's going to be about child support if they're minors. We're going to be having those conversations. Um, a big one is the house, right? That is generally most families' biggest asset. And so what happens with the house, and is someone staying in the house? Are we selling the house? Are we refinancing the house? What are we doing there? And sometimes I feel I really need to advocate to my clients not to give up, not to give up. So if we're sort of combining how the emotional and the legal divorce cross over, sometimes you just want to be done. Like just get me out of Dodge. Like I can't handle this anymore. And it can be really easy, especially if you're not the money person. It can be really easy to just say, I don't want anything. I don't want anything. Just get me out of here. And I feel sometimes like I have to walk them down off the cliff and say, your future self is not going to be happy with your current self if you make that choice, right? Because right now, the emotional piece, you just want out. But the practical piece, when your future self is calmer, is going to say, "Whoa, why did we give all of that up?" So that's where they a little bit where they overlap. But also, I would say that if you have children, the emotional divorce is maybe never really over, because as a family you have children together, which means interactions over time over those children, whether it's their high school graduation or the wedding or having grandkids, right, in the future. And so managing how we manage ourselves through the emotional part of the divorce sets the tone for that relationship going forward. So that co-parenting relationship going forward is so much of that tone is set by how we behave during the divorce, during the practical, during the legal part of the divorce, when emotions tend to be really high. So having a divorce coach and staying cool, calm, and collected so you don't say things that you wish you hadn't, and you maintain your relationship with your co-parent as much as possible, those things will pay out into the future in terms of how your children experience the divorce, because that's such an important part of this, and then how you experience it going forward.
That's that's great advice, and it's something that I think people don't think about because, like you said, is like the natural reaction is like, I am so done,
Mhm.
and they're ready to be out of there, or they're
Yeah.
ready to accept what's not a great offer, I guess, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
which they regret. But and then once some of this stuff is done, it is done. You can't go back and rewrite history on
Hmm.
this. So it's important. And yeah, so this is great stuff. So to wrap up, Taj, I have what's called the Get Ready Hot Take Trio. These are three cool questions I ask all my guests. They're more rapid fire in nature.
All
The
right.
first one is, what's one money myth you're trying to break?
That financial literacy is enough. That it is enough to teach somebody about how money works. You need to experience it. You need to live it. You need to have a plan. You need to be present with your money. Knowledge about it isn't enough.
I love it. I think financial literacy is on its own is a static thing, and that we need to go beyond that. So I love it that you have to experience it to live it. So the next question is, we'll get out the time machine for a minute. If you could go back in time, knowing what you know now about money, what would you tell your younger self?
Have a budget, girl. Have a budget. My children have budgets. So I have 17 and 18-year-old kids, and they've had budgets ever since I recognized the errors of my way. Have a budget. That simple.
I love it. And for people who don't like a budget, I call it measuring your cash flow.
Okay.
It's the same thing.
Yep.
If budget is a dirty word to you, and some people just like it's diet or like, oh my gosh, I don't want to hear the word budget.
Yeah.
All it is making sure you have less money going out than what you're earning. So
I just call it a plan for your money. That's my
exactly,
version
I
of
love
not
it.
using the B word.
Exactly, because you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Have a plan for your money if you don't like budget. But that's essentially what it is there's a reason why budgeting is used and businesses use it.
Yeah.
It's an important measure. So last question, Taj, is what is your number one tip for changing the way we think about money?
Oh, for changing the way we think about money. What a wonderful question. Don't use bank account balance budgeting. It doesn't work. So often when I talk to my clients, I say, you think that you can bank account balance budget. And what I mean by that is you think that you can look at the number in your bank account and you can go, okay, this much is rent and this much is the kids' school and this much is that. Doesn't work. Because what it forgets about is all the unexpected, expected expenses, like the new roof or the
Hmm.
water heater or the car or the computer. All of those unexpected, expected expenses are lost in bank account balance budgeting. So don't trick yourself into thinking that it works because it doesn't.
I love that. And what you said is there are unexpected expenses. And for those of us who've been alive more than an hour, is we know there's always unexpected expenses, whether
That's why I
it's
call
the
them
car.
unexpected, expected expenses because we perceive them as unexpected, but they are in fact not. They are expected. But when we bank account balance budget, when we don't have any sort of a plan for the future, they're unexpected to us and they really ruin your month when they happen.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And for people who don't like the term emergency fund, I use the term rainy day fund. You can use whatever term you need. You just need cash in case something happens because life happens, which is the
Yes,
name of the podcast. So,
I love it.
anyway, so Taj, where can listeners learn more about you and your coaching?
So I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me under Taj Johnson Chu. That's very simple. It's a great way to connect with me. You can message me there. And I also have a website, just tajchu.com.
Fantastic. And for everybody who has access to the show notes, you can go to the show notes and there'll be links to Taj's LinkedIn profile and to her website. Taj, thanks for coming on today and sharing your journey and your insights.
Thank you so much, Tony. That was fun.
Yeah, this is awesome. And thank you, everybody, as always, for tuning in to this episode of Get Ready Before Life Happens. If you learned something today to change the way you think about money and divorce, please be sure to subscribe and to share it with a friend. You can also go to my website at tonystewart.com to join the Get Ready movement to get access to my newsletter and a whole bunch of resources. Because life happens, let's get ready.